The crimson light of the twin suns cast long shadows across the bridge of the Velthanor, flagship of the Catherian Dominion's most feared battle fleet. Admiral Vex Miran stood before the massive viewing ports, his scaled hands clasped behind. His back as he surveyed the conquered system spread before him. 12 worlds, each once home to thriving civilizations, now bore the mark of Catherian rule. Orbital stations bristling with weapons, surface cities reduced to mining colonies, and populations bent to the Dominion's will. "Another successful campaign, Admiral," purred Commander Zilnaya, her serpentine features twisted in satisfaction. The holographic display showed their fleet's devastating efficiency. 300 ships of various classes, from massive dreadnoughts to swift interceptors, all bearing the triple claw insignia of the Dominion. The Altarian resistance lasted barely 2 standard cycles. Their plasma cannons were primitive. Vex Miran's mandibles clicked in amusement. For 8 centuries, the Catherian Dominion had swept across this spiral arm of the galaxy like a plague of metal and fire. Their technology was superior, their tactics ruthless, their hunger for conquest insatiable. The bio-neural networks that controlled their ships responded faster than any organic mind could think. Their quantum disruption weapons could tear apart molecular bonds themselves. Most importantly, their warrior culture had been honed through millennia of conflict. They knew only victory. "Signal the 2nd and 3rd fleets," Vex Miran commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless conquered worlds. "Begin harvesting operations on the outer planets. I want their rare Earth deposits stripped within the cycle." The bridge hummed with activity as junior officers relayed commands across the fleet. Vex Miran watched with pride as his ships moved, with mechanical precision, each vessel a testament to Catherian engineering supremacy. The Velthanor alone was 5 kilometers long, its hull bristling with enough firepower to glass a continent. Its shields could withstand direct hits from stellar bombardment cannons. Its AI-guided targeting systems had never missed a shot in combat. Yet something nagged at the Admiral's consciousness, a report that had crossed his command console 3 cycles ago. A single contact, detected at the edge of the system by long-range eye. Sensors before vanishing without explanation. The signature had been unlike anything in their extensive databases. Not Altarian, not Vorkesian, not any of the dozen species they'd encountered in this sector. "Admiral," interrupted Navigation Officer Kexthor, his voice carrying an unusual tension. "Long-range scanners are detecting an incoming vessel. Single ship, unknown configuration." Vex Miran turned, interest peaked. "Reinforcements for the Altarians? Impossible. Their distress signals couldn't have reached Allied space so quickly." "No, sir. The signature doesn't match any known species in our databases." And Admiral Kexthor's chromatophores flickered nervously. "It's approaching at 0.75. Light speed, without a hyperspace wake." The bridge fell silent. Such velocity without hyperspace technology was theoretically impossible, requiring energy expenditures that would drain most civilizations' entire power grids. Vex Miran's tactical mind began calculating possibilities, but each scenario seemed more improbable than the last. "Size classification?" he demanded. "Approximately 800 meters. Single hull, minimal external weaponry visible. But, Admiral, the energy readings are anomalous." Vex Miran's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. 8 centuries of conquest had taught him that every species believed themselves formidable until they faced Catherian might. This newcomer, whatever their origins, would learn the same lesson that had been taught to hundreds of worlds. "Battle stations," he commanded, and throughout the fleet, 300 warships began powering their weapon systems. "Let's give our mysterious visitor a proper Catherian welcome." The unknown vessel decelerated from near-light speed with impossible grace, its hull gleaming like polished obsidian against the star field. Captain Reina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Meridian's edge. her weathered hands steady on the command console despite the magnitude of what lay before them. Through the reinforced viewing ports, she could see the Catherian fleet arrayed in perfect battle formation. Hundreds of ships that dwarfed her own vessel, their weapons already tracking her approach. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Dax Corvin, from the sensor station, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the ship's quantum processors. "I'm reading massive electromagnetic buildups across their entire fleet. They're preparing to fire." "Hostile intentions confirmed," added Chief Navigator Isla Pembroke, her augmented neural pathways processing threat assessments at superhuman speed. "Recommend evasive maneuvers." Vasquez remained motionless, her enhanced retinas analyzing the tactical display with cold precision. The Catherian Dominion, she'd studied their expansion patterns during the long journey from Earth. Their methodology was efficient if brutal. Overwhelm, conquer, subjugate. They'd carved out an empire spanning dozens of star systems, leaving broken civilizations in their wake, but they had never encountered humanity. "Sir," called Chief Engineer Tomas Caney from the engineering section, his voice carrying through the ship's neural communication network, "the quantum processors are running hot. The crew is requesting permission to engage active countermeasures." Vasquez keyed her personal comm. "All stations, this is the captain. Maintain yellow alert status. Do not activate weapon systems without direct authorization." She paused, watching as the Catherian formation tightened around her ship like a metal noose. "We're here to make contact, not start a war." On the Velthanor, Admiral Vex Mirren studied the alien vessel with growing confusion. His bioscanners detected only 123 life forms aboard, a skeleton crew by Catherian standards. The ship's construction appeared crude, lacking the elegant curves and biomechanical integration that marked superior technology. Yet something about its energy signature made his combat instincts scream warnings. "Admiral," reported Chief Science Officer Dralvex, "preliminary scans indicate their hull composition is an unknown ceramic metallic composite. The energy readings suggest some form of contained antimatter reaction, but the containment field architecture is peculiar. Weapons status: minimal external armaments visible, a few turret emplacements possibly plasma-based. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest frigates." Vex Mirren's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. As expected, another primitive species, with delusions of power. "Open a channel. Let's see what this vermin has to say before we vaporize them." The main viewer shimmered, and Captain Vasquez found herself face to face with her Catherian counterpart. She studied his reptilian features, noting the predatory intelligence in his yellow eyes, the casual arrogance in his posture. She'd seen that look before, in the archives of Earth's bloodiest wars, the expression of those who considered themselves apex predators. "I am Admiral Vex Mirren of the Catherian Dominion," the alien commander began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of conquest. "You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and state your business or be destroyed." Vasquez straightened, her voice carrying no trace of fear despite being outnumbered 300 to 1. "Captain Reina Vasquez, Earth Expeditionary Force Vessel Meridian's Edge. We're explorers, seeking to establish diplomatic contact with species in this sector." "Earth?" Vex Mirren's translator struggled with the unfamiliar designation. "Your species is unknown to us. No matter. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral." The Catherian commander's expression shifted to one of amused disbelief. "You are one ship against 300. Your vessel appears to be nothing more than an armed transport. Surrender now, and we may permit your crew to live as slaves." Vasquez allowed herself a thin smile. "Admiral, before this conversation continues, I should probably mention something. This isn't just any ship from Earth." She leaned forward slightly, her augmented eyes reflecting the bridge lights. "This is a human warship, and humans, we don't surrender." Admiral Vex Mirren's laughter echoed across the Velthanor's bridge, a sound like grinding metal that made his junior officers shift uncomfortably. A human warship? This tiny vessel with its primitive construction and skeletal crew? The creature calling itself Vasquez was either insane or monumentally ignorant of the forces arrayed against her. "Human," he repeated, savoring the alien word. "Another species that believes courage can overcome superior firepower. How quaint." His expression hardened. "You have 10 standard time units to reconsider. After that, we begin target practice." The communication channel closed, leaving Captain Vasquez staring at the tactical display. 300 ships. The largest measured over 5 kilometers in length, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Any rational species would have fled or surrendered, but humans had never been accused of excessive rationality. "Captain," Lieutenant Corvin's voice carried a note of concern. "Their targeting systems are painting us from multiple vectors. Whatever they're using, it's penetrating our passive stealth pretty effectively." "Expected," Vasquez replied, studying the formation patterns. "Dax, give me a full spectrum analysis of their weapons signatures. Isla, plot evasion courses. I want options that keep us within the asteroid belt if possible. Tomas." She paused, her fingers hovering over the command authorization panel. "Bring the quantum drives to full power. All of them." In the engineering section, Chief Caney's hands flew over his control surfaces with practiced efficiency. Around him, the Meridian's edge's true nature began to reveal itself. Bulkheads retracted to expose weapon systems that had no equivalent in Catherian technology. Quantum field generators hummed to life, bending space-time in ways that made the ship's sensor profile shift and blur. Most significantly, the antimatter containment fields that Dralvex had found so peculiar began operating at their designed parameters. The human ship hadn't been built to explore, it had been built to hunt. "Admiral," reported Kexthor, his voice tight with confusion, "the human vessel's energy signature just changed. It's reading 50 times more powerful than initial scans indicated." Vex Mirren frowned, studying the tactical display. "Sensor malfunction. Run a full diagnostic." "Negative, sir. Readings confirmed across all sensor arrays. And, Admiral, they're moving." On the Meridian's edge, Captain Vasquez felt the familiar sensation of quantum drives engaging. Reality seemed to bend around her as the ship accelerated beyond what conventional physics should allow. The Catherian formation, arranged in a perfect encirclement, suddenly found their target accelerating directly toward their flagship at velocities that should have torn any ship apart. "Evasive action!" Vex Mirren barked, but the human vessel moved with impossible agility, threading between plasma bolts and particle beams as if guided by prescience rather than sensors. The Meridian's edge rolled inverted as it passed beneath the Velthanor, and for one horrific moment, Admiral Vex Mirren found himself staring directly into what he had assumed were primitive weapon turrets. The energy buildup was visible to the naked eye, a blue-white glow that spoke of barely contained stellar fury. The first shot proved that humanity had learned different lessons from their wars than the Catherian Dominion had from theirs. The quantum plasma lance punched through the Velthanor's shields as if they were decorative lights, carved through 5 decks of military-grade armor, and emerged from the opposite side of the ship, trailing superheated metal vapor. Damage alarms screamed across the flagship's bridge as atmosphere vented into space and critical systems went offline. "Return fire!" Vex Mirren roared, clutching his command throne as the ship shuddered. "All ships, converging fire pattern 7. Destroy that vessel!" But the human ship was already gone, having used its impossible acceleration to streak away from the formation before the Catherian gunners could track it. 300 ships fired at empty space, their energy beams creating a deadly light show that illuminated nothing but vacuum. "Damage report," the Admiral demanded. "Primary shields offline. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 17. 17 crew casualties." Commander Zilnaya's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Sir, how did one shot penetrate our defenses so completely?" Vex Mirren had no answer. In 8 centuries of conquest, Cytherian shields had never failed so catastrophically. Their armor had never been pierced so effortlessly, and no enemy had ever moved with such precision and speed. "Admiral," Kexthor called out, "the human ship is coming around for another pass. They're heading directly for the Second Fleet's formation." Through the viewing ports, Vex Mirren watched as the Meridian's edge streaked toward a cluster of heavy cruisers, rolling and weaving through their defensive fire with mechanical precision. This time, the human ship fired continuously, 6 quantum plasma, lances that turned proud Cytherian warships into expanding clouds of debris and radiation. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vex Mirren felt something he had never experienced: fear. The Second Fleet's command ship, the Kethmaran, died in silence, its death scream lost in the vacuum as the human weapon tore through its reactor core. Captain Vasquez watched dispassionately as the explosion briefly outshone the system's twin suns, adding another casualty to humanity's ledger. Around her, the bridge crew worked with mechanical efficiency, their augmented reflexes and neural interfaces allowing them to process battlefield information faster than any unenhanced mind could comprehend. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Corvin, his cybernetic implants linked directly to the ship's targeting matrix. "Cytherian Heavy. Cruiser bearing 27 Mark 8. Quantum lances charged and ready. Fire." The Meridian's edge shuddered as another lance of contained stellar fire erupted from its weapons array. The Cytherian cruiser's shields flared and died, its hull splitting like rotten fruit under the impossible energies directed against it. Escape pods scattered from the dying vessel like seeds from a burning tree. But Captain Vasquez's orders had been clear: no survivors who might report humanity's capabilities to the wider galaxy. Corvin, clean sweep. No witnesses. The targeting. Computer identified and eliminated the escape pods with mechanical precision, each one vanishing in a brief flare of light. The human ship moved through the Cytherian formation like a shark through a school of fish, its quantum drives allowing maneuvers that defied conventional understanding of inertia and acceleration. On the Velthanor, Admiral Vex Mirren watched. His fleet, the pride of the Cytherian Dominion, being systematically dismantled by a single enemy vessel. Ship after ship fell to those impossible weapons, their shields and armor as effective as tissue paper against the humans' quantum plasma technology. His tactical officers called out damage reports and casualty figures with increasing desperation, but the numbers had ceased to have meaning. "Admiral," Commander Zilnaya's voice cracked with strain, "we've lost 47 ships. The humans are targeting our heavy units first. They're trying to eliminate our command and control capabilities." "I can see that," Vex Mirren snarled, his composure finally breaking. "What I want to know is how. Their technology should be inferior. Our sensors read their hull as primitive ceramic composites." Chief Science Officer Dralvex looked up from his analysis station, his chromatophores cycling through colors that indicated extreme stress. "Admiral, I believe the ceramic coating is some form of sensor refractive material. The human ship's true construction appears to be based on quantum-stabilized matter that our scanners cannot properly analyze. As for their weapons," he paused, checking his readings again. "They appear to be weaponizing stellar fusion reactions. Each shot contains the energy equivalent of a small star's core output, compressed and directed through quantum focusing arrays." Vex Mirren felt his world shift. Stellar-level energy weapons, quantum manipulation technology, sensor-invisible construction materials. This wasn't primitive technology. This was so far beyond Cytherian science that it might as well have been magic. "Communication from the human vessel," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." Captain Vasquez appeared on the main viewer, and Vex Mirren was struck by how little she had changed during the battle. No signs of stress, no indication that she had just destroyed nearly 50 warships. Her enhanced eyes regarded him with the cold calculation of a predator evaluating wounded prey. "Admiral Vex Mirren," she began, her voice carrying across the silent bridge. "I'm prepared to offer terms." "Terms?" The word came out as a croak. "Unconditional surrender of all Catherian forces in this system. Immediate cessation of hostilities against all indigenous species. Withdrawal of occupation forces from conquered worlds." She paused, consulting a display off-camera. "You have 30 seconds to comply." Vex Mirren's mandibles worked soundlessly. Surrender? The Catherian Dominion had never surrendered. In 8 centuries of conquest, the concept had never been considered. They were the apex predators of this galactic region, the supreme military force that— 20 seconds. Around him, his bridge crew stared in shock. Some looked to their admiral for guidance, others watched the tactical display where the human ship continued its methodical destruction of the fleet. 17 more ships had died while Vasquez delivered her ultimatum. "Admiral," whispered Zilnaya, "perhaps we should consider—" "Never!" Vex Mirren roared, his warrior's pride overriding tactical logic. "All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot defeat them with weapons, we'll destroy them through mass." But even as he gave the order, Vex Mirren knew it was futile. The human ship accelerated away from the converging Catherian vessels with casual ease, its quantum drives allowing it to dance between their desperate charges. More lances of stellar fire reached out, and more proud warships became expanding. Clouds of radioactive debris. Captain Vasquez watched the Catherian admiral's final gambit with something approaching pity. They fought with the tactics of their past victories, unable to adapt to an enemy that operated by different rules entirely. It was the same mistake that had cost humanity so dearly in their early wars, the assumption that superiority in one area guaranteed superiority in all others. "Time's up, Admiral," she said softly, knowing he could still hear her transmission. "I did try to offer you a choice." The Velthanor shuddered as another quantum plasma lance burned through its starboard. Weapon arrays, leaving twisted metal and venting atmosphere in its wake. Admiral Vex Mirren gripped his command throne as the bridge lights flickered, emergency power routing around damaged systems. Through the chaos of damage reports and tactical updates, one fact remained crystal clear. His fleet was being annihilated by a single human vessel. "Fleet status," he barked, though he dreaded the answer. 137 ships destroyed, reported Commander Zilnaya, her voice hollow with disbelief. 42 more reporting critical damage. The Third Fleet's command structure has been completely eliminated. Vex Mirren closed his eyes, his warrior's pride warring with the tactical reality before him. The Catherian Dominion had built its empire on the principle of overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy that could not be conquered through superior numbers and firepower. But this human ship moved through their formations like death incarnate, its impossible weapons reducing kilometer-long warships to expanding gas clouds. "Sir," called Kexthor from the navigation station, "the human vessel has changed course. They're heading directly for us." Through the main viewer, Vex Mirren watched the Meridian's edge approach with the inevitability of an avalanche. Its hull bore no visible damage despite the concentrated fire of hundreds of ships. Its movements remained precise and controlled, as if this wholesale slaughter was merely a training exercise for its crew. The communication channel activated without his authorization. Somehow the humans had overridden his ship's security protocols with casual ease. "Admiral," Captain Vasquez's voice carried across the bridge with calm authority. "Last chance. Surrender now, or I'll be forced to demonstrate why humanity doesn't make empty threats." "Demonstrate?" Vex Mirren snarled, his pride refusing to bend, even in the face of annihilation. "You've murdered thousands of my warriors. What more demonstration do you need? Vasquez's expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in her augmented eyes, a flicker of the cold calculation that had made humanity the apex predator of their home system. Admiral, everything you've seen so far has been conducted with our weapons set to minimum yield. We've been gentle. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Minimum yield? Vex Mirren stared at the tactical display showing the graveyard of his fleet, each marker representing hundreds of trained warriors and centuries of technological development. If this carnage represented restraint, then what was humanity capable of when truly unleashed? On the Meridian's edge, Captain Vasquez turned to her weapons officer. Corvin, reconfigure the quantum lances for maximum yield. I want a demonstration. They'll never forget. Aye, Captain. Targeting parameters? Vasquez studied the tactical display, her enhanced mind processing dozens of variables simultaneously. The asteroid belt at the system's edge, a collection of rocks and debris that posed no threat to anyone. Perfect for showing the Catherians what human weapons could really accomplish. Target the largest asteroid in the belt. Full power, single shot. Lieutenant Corvin's cybernetic implants interfaced with the ship's targeting matrix, quantum computers calculating firing solutions with impossible precision. Target acquired, quantum lance charging to maximum yield. The weapon that emerged from the Meridian's edge defied every principle of warfare the Catherians understood. Instead of the blue-white beam they had grown to fear, this lance appeared as a pillar of pure annihilation. Reality itself seemed to bend around its passage as it crossed the void between ship and target. The asteroid was 12 kilometers in diameter, composed of dense metallic ores that had been forged in the heart of a dying star. It had existed for billions of years, a silent monument to cosmic forces beyond imagination. It ceased to exist in 0.3 seconds. The quantum plasma lance didn't simply destroy the asteroid, it unraveled it at the molecular level, converting solid matter directly into energy in a cascade reaction that briefly outshone the system's twin suns. The resulting explosion was, visible from every ship in the fleet, a new star that blazed for 17 seconds before fading to leave nothing but empty space. On the Velthanor, every sensor on the ship screamed warnings as the energy release overwhelmed their detection. Equipment. Admiral Vex Mirren stared at the empty space where a mountain-sized asteroid had existed moments before, his mind struggling to comprehend the forces he had witnessed. Energy output analysis, he whispered. Dralvex checked his instruments twice. Before responding, his voice barely audible. Equivalent to approximately 47 stellar core detonations, compressed into a 17-second release. Admiral, they converted an entire asteroid's mass directly into energy. Matter-to-energy conversion. The theoretical pinnacle of weapons technology, discussed in academic papers but never achieved by any known civilization. The humans had not only achieved it, they had weaponized it and mounted it on a single ship. The communication channel opened again, and Captain Vasquez appeared on screen with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the engagement. Now you understand, Admiral. That was one shot from one ship. Earth has sent forth many ships, and we all carry such weapons. She leaned forward slightly. Your choice is simple. Surrender now, and your remaining crews live, or continue fighting and face the full measure of human warfare. Vex Mirren looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers, warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, who had never known defeat or fear. Now they stared at him with expressions of horror and desperate hope, waiting for their admiral to make the choice that would determine whether they lived or died. The pride of 8 centuries struggled against the reality of human supremacy. The Catherian dominion, master of hundreds of worlds, brought low by a single vessel from a species they had never heard of. All ships. Vex Mirren's voice came out as a broken whisper. Stand down, weapons. Prepare for its surrender. For the first time in their history, the Catherian Dominion had met their match and lost. The surrender protocols took place in the cavernous docking bay of the Velthanor, where Admiral Vex Mirren found himself face-to-face with his conqueror. Captain Vasquez had arrived with only a small honor guard, 6 humans in sleek environmental suits that seemed more ceremonial than protective. The casual confidence of this gesture was not lost on the Catherian commander. She felt so secure in her victory that she walked unarmed into the heart of his flagship. Vex Mirren studied her as she approached, noting details his sensors had missed during their brief communications. Vasquez was tall for her species, her movements carrying the fluid precision of someone whose reflexes had been enhanced beyond natural limits. Her eyes held flecks of silver that spoke of cybernetic augmentation, and there was something in her bearing that reminded him of the apex predators from his own homeworld, a quiet confidence born of absolute superiority. "Admiral," she said, offering what her species apparently considered a respectful nod. "I appreciate your wisdom in ending this engagement before more lives were lost." "Wisdom?" Vex Mirren's mandibles clicked bitterly. "You mean cowardice. I have dishonored 8 centuries of Catherian military tradition." "You've saved the lives of your remaining crews," Vasquez replied matter-of-factly. "That's not cowardice. That's leadership. On Earth, we have a saying, discretion is the better part of valor. Sometimes knowing when not to fight is more important than knowing how to fight." The formal surrender ceremony was mercifully brief. Vex Mirren handed over his command codes and fleet authorization crystals, each gesture feeling like a dagger through his warrior's heart. Around them, Catherian officers watched in stunned silence as their admiral submitted to an alien conqueror. "The terms," Vasquez began, consulting a holographic display projected from her wrist-mounted device, "are non-negotiable. Complete withdrawal from all conquered systems within this sector. Reparations to be paid to subjugated species for damages and suffering caused. Immediate cessation of all military expansion activities. And if we refuse?" The question came from Commander Zilnaya, her serpentine features twisted with barely contained rage. Captain Vasquez turned her augmented gaze to the Catherian officer, and for a moment, Vex Mirren saw something that chilled his scaled blood. Behind the human's calm exterior lay something primal and terrifying, a predator's instinct honed by millennia of evolution and refined by technologies beyond Catherian understanding. "Commander, your fleet had 300 ships when this engagement began. You now have 96 functional vessels remaining. My ship is one of 57 currently operating in this galactic sector." She paused, letting the mathematics sink in. "If you refuse these terms, there won't be a Catherian dominion left to negotiate with." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the ship's life support systems. Vex Mirren felt the weight of his species' future settling on his shoulders. The Dominion had been built through conquest and maintained through fear. But fear only worked when you were the most frightening force in the galaxy. "There is one question I must ask," he said finally. "Your species, these humans, where do you come from? How did you develop such weapons?" Vasquez's expression softened slightly, and for the first time since her arrival, she seemed almost sympathetic. "Earth is a harsh world, Admiral. Our species evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't have claws or fangs or natural armor. What we had was intelligence and the ability to never give up. We survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and a dozen extinction events that should have wiped us out." She gestured to her honor guard, who stood with the relaxed alertness of apex predators. "When we developed technology, we didn't use it to conquer. We used it to survive. Every weapon we've created, every defense we've built, comes from the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, there might be something trying to kill us. We became very, very good at making sure that never happened. But surely, Dralvex interjected, your species must have periods of peace, times when you focused on art, philosophy, cultural development. Of course, Vasquez nodded. Some of our greatest achievements came during peacetime. But we never forgot the lesson our homeworld taught us. Peace is a temporary condition. War is the default state of the universe, so we prepared for war even while we celebrated peace. Veximiran understood now. The Catherian Dominion had conquered through superior technology and ruthless tactics, but they had grown complacent in their success. They had forgotten that somewhere in the galaxy there might be species that had learned different lessons from their evolutionary struggles, species that had been forged in even harsher crucibles. The reparations, he said quietly. What exactly do you require? Medical supplies, food, construction materials, whatever the conquered worlds need to rebuild what your forces destroyed. No weapons, no military technology, just the basic necessities for civilizations to heal. It was, Veximiran realized, remarkably merciful. A human conqueror could have demanded tribute, slaves, or technological secrets. Instead, they asked only that the Dominion undo some of the damage it had caused. And afterwards, he asked, when the reparations are paid and the withdrawals complete? Captain Vasquez consulted her wrist display again. The Earth Expeditionary Force will establish monitoring stations throughout this sector. Any resumption of aggressive expansion will be met with immediate response. Beyond that, she shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to be both casual and ominous. That depends entirely on your species' ability to learn from this experience. As the ceremony concluded and the human delegation prepared to depart, Admiral Veximiran found himself grappling with a new reality. The Catherian Dominion, apex predator of this galactic region for 8 centuries, had become prey in the span of a single engagement. But perhaps, he thought as he watched Captain Vasquez's shuttle disappear into the star field, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Pride had made them strong, but it had also made them blind to their own limitations. The humans had just given them a very expensive lesson in humility. 6 months after the Battle of Altair, as it would be recorded in both human and Catherian historical archives, Admiral Veximiran stood in his private quarters aboard the Velthanor, staring at reports that would have been unthinkable during the height of the Dominion's power. Medical supplies flowing to former slave worlds, construction, materials being distributed to rebuild infrastructure his fleets had destroyed. Catherian engineers working alongside the species they had once conquered, sharing knowledge instead of imposing servitude. The transformation had been neither swift nor painless. Many within the Dominion's hierarchy had struggled to accept their new reality, some going so far as to launch desperate assassination attempts against the human monitoring stations. Those incidents had been dealt with swiftly and decisively, entire rebel fleets vanishing without a trace, their fate serving as grim reminders of what humanity was capable of when pushed. But for those who embraced the new order, unexpected benefits had emerged. The former slave species possessed technologies and knowledge that the Dominion had never bothered to learn, viewing their subjects as sources of raw materials rather than partners. The Virillian bioengineering techniques were revolutionizing Catherian medicine. The Altarian quantum mathematics were opening new frontiers in space-time manipulation. The Mordak philosophical traditions were helping Catherian psychologists understand and treat the deep cultural trauma that centuries of conquest had inflicted on their own people. A soft chime announced an incoming communication. Veximiran accepted, it unsurprised to see Captain Vasquez's face appear on his personal view screen. These monthly check-ins had become routine, though the Admiral had noticed a gradual shift in tone from interrogation to something approaching professional consultation. "Admiral!" Vasquez greeted him with what humans called a smile, an expression that had initially terrified Cytherian children but was gradually being recognized as a sign of peaceful intent. The quarterly reports look encouraging. Reconstruction. Efforts on Virilis Prime are ahead of schedule. The humans helped, Vex Mirren admitted grudgingly. Your engineering techniques are efficient. Humanity learned the hard way that it's easier to build than to destroy, and much more profitable in the long run. Vasquez consulted something off-screen. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you. We've detected energy signatures at the galactic rim, possible signs of another expansionist civilization. Vex Mirren's blood chilled. Hostile? Unknown. But their technology appears to be based on dark matter manipulation, potentially very dangerous. We're dispatching additional ships to investigate, but... She paused, and the Admiral recognized the expression of someone about to make an unexpected offer. We could use allies who understand this region of space. The implications hit Vex Mirren like a physical blow. You're asking the Dominion to fight alongside humanity? I'm asking experienced warriors to help protect the civilizations they once conquered. Vasquez's tone remained carefully neutral. Your ships are still formidable, Admiral. Your crews still remember how to fight. The question is whether they're willing to fight for something other than conquest. Through his quarter's viewing port, Vex Mirren could see the mixed fleet that now patrolled the sector. Cytherian warships flying alongside Virillian biocruisers and Altarian science vessels, former enemies united under the watchful eye of humanity's sleek destroyers. The sight still felt surreal, but he could no longer deny its effectiveness. Piracy had dropped to negligible levels. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries were reopening. Species that had cowered in fear were beginning to explore and expand again. What would you need from us? He asked finally. Intelligence on potential weaknesses in dark matter technology, tactical coordination with our fleet elements. Most importantly, Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her augmented eyes reflecting something that might have been respect. We need someone who understands what it means to face an enemy that seems invincible. You've been on both sides of that equation now, Admiral. That experience could save lives. Vex Mirren considered the offer, his mind racing through possibilities. The warrior culture that had driven Cytherian expansion hadn't disappeared. It had simply found a new purpose. Instead of conquering for personal glory, they could fight to protect the very species they had once oppressed. Instead of spreading fear, they could stand as guardians against the darkness that lurked beyond the galactic rim. I'll need to consult with the Council of Hierarchs, he said finally. But Admiral, he caught himself using her naval rank instead of her species designation, a small but significant shift in perspective. If we do this, it won't be as your subordinates. The Dominion fights as equals or not at all. Vasquez's smile widened, revealing the Predator's teeth that had once terrified him. Now, strangely, the expression felt reassuring. I wouldn't have it any other way, Admiral. Humanity has always preferred dangerous allies to obedient servants. The communication ended, leaving Vex Mirren alone with his thoughts and the weight of a decision that would reshape his species' destiny once again. Outside his window, a Cytherian patrol ship was rendezvousing with a human destroyer, their crews working together to investigate an anomalous energy reading near the third planet's moon. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been unthinkable. Now it seemed as natural as breathing. 3 days later, the Council of Hierarchs voted unanimously to accept humanity's alliance proposal. The vote wasn't driven by fear. That emotion had been replaced by something far more powerful and sustainable. It was driven by purpose. The Cytherian Dominion had spent 8 centuries as apex predators, believing that strength came from standing alone at the top of the food chain. Humanity had taught them a different lesson. True strength came from knowing when to hunt and when to protect, when to stand apart and when to stand together. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers that no single species could face alone. But together, working as partners rather than conquerors, they could face anything the universe threw at them. As the first joint human-Catherian task force departed for the galactic rim 3 weeks later, Admiral Vex Mirren found himself standing beside Captain Vasquez on the bridge of the Meridian's edge. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was now a guest aboard the same ship that had single-handedly destroyed half his fleet. But the bridge felt less like the domain of a conqueror and more like the command center of something he had never experienced before, a true alliance between equals. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Corvin. "Multiple vessels, unknown configuration. They're not responding to our hails." Vasquez turned to Vex Mirren, her expression serious but lacking the cold calculation he remembered from their first encounter. "Admiral, your thoughts?" Vex Mirren studied the tactical display, his centuries of combat experience meshing seamlessly with human technology and Catherian instincts. Dispersed formation, quantum stealth capabilities, weapons, charged but not locked on. They're curious but cautious. Classic first contact protocols. Agreed. Signal the fleet. Defensive posture, but keep communications channels open. If there's one thing this galaxy has taught us, it's that first impressions matter. As the combined fleet moved toward their first joint operation, Admiral Vex Mirren reflected on how much had changed since that day when a single human ship had appeared at the edge of Altarian space. The Catherian Dominion had thought themselves apex predators, secure in their strength and terrifying in their power. They had been wrong, but in being wrong, they had discovered something far more valuable than conquest. They had discovered what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. The galaxy was no longer divided between predators and prey, conquerors and conquered. It was divided between those who would stand together against the darkness and those who would face it alone. And as the unknown ships began transmitting what might have been peaceful greetings in 17 different languages, Admiral Vex Mirren allowed himself a thin smile. The humans had been right about one thing. The universe was indeed a dangerous place, but perhaps, working together, they could make it a little less so. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and somewhere in the void, between the stars, new challenges waited to test the bonds that had been forged in the crucible of humanity's swift and terrible justice. But whatever came next, they would face it not as separate species fighting for individual survival, but as allies united in the knowledge that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary, and when it was time to build something better from the ashes of the old. The galaxy had felt safe and strong under Catherian rule. It had learned fear when humanity arrived. Now, perhaps, it could finally learn hope.